Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about some new polling coming out of GOP primary voters. And we're going to talk about that and what that might mean when we get beyond the primary, especially if the polling holds. Right now, there are a number of people who are talking about the enthusiasm that voters have for the former president. The problem is they are basing that read off of the enthusiasm of primary voters. GOP primary voters. That's who's getting polled in this. I think the recent one said that 60% of GOP primary voters that they want the former president as their candidate again. And that's being interpreted as a lot of enthusiasm for the former president. But that enthusiasm is coming from the GOP's most engaged part of the base. It's not coming from the electorate as a whole. It's coming from a very specific group. People who are already very enthusiastic about the Republican Party. That's why they're primary voters. The GOP may need to start thinking about actual electability beyond the primary because Trump doesn't have that. He already lost. He already lost to the person he's likely to face. Since then, there was all of the claims about the election. There was January 6th. There was the civil suit, the multiple indictments. The odds that the average American, not the primary voter, the average American is enthusiastic about Trump. I don't think that that's the case. And it might be time for the Republican Party to do something that the Democratic Party does so often. It actually annoys Democrats, which is look at electability beyond the primary. The Democratic Party does this by default to an extreme, to the point where they will actually nominate somebody who generates less enthusiasm among their base, to the point where some of their base don't even show up. So it's not always a good idea. I have a lot of criticism when the Democratic Party does this sometimes. But at this point, there is probably still a trend with Trump where people will show up to vote against him. They will be more enthusiastic, and there will be more voter turnout driven by his presence that is to vote against him, not to vote for him. The reason this should worry the Republican Party as a whole is because those people who may not show up to vote, if it wasn't Trump, they're not going to vote for the other Republican candidates. I would imagine that a whole lot of them would be Democratic Party voters all the way down. The metric of enthusiasm, it's important. It is, and it's something that gets grossly overlooked when people are talking about polling. Trump has enthusiasm among his base, amazing levels of enthusiasm. Honestly, enthusiasm that really can't be rivaled by most politicians out there. The problem is his base isn't enough to win. And if his presence drives voter turnout for the Democratic Party, it's certainly not enough. The Republican Party is walking into a major issue. One that I think can go sideways for them in a number of ways. First, the obvious one. He wins the primary, gets to the general, a whole bunch of people who wouldn't bother to show up to vote for Biden show up to vote against Trump. That's one. Another one would be, he gets the nomination and then any of the multiple legal entanglements that he is involved in catch up to him. The Republican Party is going to have a hard time fielding a real candidate at that point. The Republican Party is looking at enthusiasm among not even their whole base, but just primary voters, rather than the general electability of their client. I'm sorry, not their client, their candidate. I feel like that's probably a bad move for the Republican Party as a whole. And I feel like there's probably a lot of Republican candidates at the local and state level that will end up paying for this. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.